I'm going to make this a very momentous night with a prediction because and I think I have the credibility for this prediction. Every time he's been done crazy shit and gotten himself in trouble, I said, no, it's not over. I've said that. Tonight I'm saying, I think it's over.
The post-debate bad news keeps pouring in for Donald Trump as the polls are devastating. And comedian, political commentator, and well-known cynical prophet Bill Maher has finally made a very optimistic prediction about the 2024 election, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about and watch in this video. Bill Maher again, controversial comedian and political commentator. He tends to be more centrist than I'd like. He tends to give more voice to niche culture, war nonsense than I'd like. But when it comes to electoral politics, he's pretty reliable in the fact that he recognizes Trump as an authoritarian threat to democracy, that the MAGA Republican Party is absolutely insane, and that the Democratic Party is by far the better governing party. He's also a cynic. He has made some very cynical predictions and assessments about the state of electoral politics in the Trump age, many of which have been bad for Democrats and consequential for the 2080s country, and we'll get into some of those historic predictions and assessments to establish Maher's credibility. But even this cynic, this Kinley cynic, who tends to see the worsen in things, he has a very optimistic prediction about the state of politics and the 2024 election after Trump's disastrous beatdown at the hands of the vice president. Here it is.
All right, I'm going to make this a very momentous night with a prediction because and I think I have the credibility for this prediction because I have been called a Trump alarmist for a very long time. They were wrong. I was right. He wasn't going to leave power. Okay. But ever since then, and since the Hollywood Access tape where he said, I'm going to grab him by the pussy, and he survived that, every time he's been done crazy shit and gotten himself in trouble, I said, no, it's not over. I've said that. I've argued with people. Brett Stevens, my good friend, he's on the show next week. He said at one point a few years ago, the Trump thing, I said, no. Tonight I'm saying, I think it's over. I just want to bring up an analogy to one person. Even before we were around, there was a guy named Joe McCarthy in the early 50s, and he had a hold on America. And it blew out in about 2 years, right? 2-3 years. He was the biggest thing, and then it was just, and I feel like eating the dogs, we're at this point. I feel like we're at the Captain Queeg with the strawberries. We're at Denzel at the end of Training Day. I'm King Kong up here. I just think he's going to lose.
So there you go. Bill Maher, well-known cynic. A guy again. We're going to establish some of his bona fide as he thinks that Donald Trump's debate performance was so disastrous that this is the end of Trump. And he's referring specifically to one of the viral moments in which Donald Trump publicly boosted a conspiracy theory that Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio were eating people's cats and dogs. It is a conspiracy theory. It is a perpetuating racist tropes. It's led to multiple bomb threats in public schools and public buildings in Springfield, Ohio. So it's endangering the lives of women, children, men, innocent people across this country. And the immigrants as well, including those innocents. So it's screwing everybody. Donald Trump's signal boosting of this nonsense. And Bill Maher says this is the end. This is the end of Donald Trump's political career. I'm not sure I am that optimistic, and I'm a well-known cynic as well, and I thought that predicted that the vice president was going to kick his butt in the debate, and she did, and I'm very pleased with how things are going. But to me, it says something that somebody like Bill Maher, as cynical, pessimistic as he is, he thinks this is the end, that this is the death knell of Trump's political career. So I should say, to establish his credibility, this is a clip of an interview between Chris Cuomo when he was on CNN and Bill Maher back in 2019. So 2 years before the event that we're about to reference. But Bill Maher made a prediction a year and a half, 2 years in advance, that Donald Trump would not observe the peaceful transfer of power if he lost the 2020 election and would not leave peacefully.
Give me a feel for what you think about, not necessarily predictions, but what do you imagine happening going forward? In whatever political way is relevant.
One of those things, to take up your point that I've been talking about for years now, almost 3 years, that a lot of people are talking about now, is that if he loses Trump, he won't go. I've been saying that since before he got elected, that if he loses the second time, and if he loses the coming election, and Michael Cohen said that, Nancy Pelosi said that, a lot of people now, and I think that is what we have to worry about, because a lot of people say, well, yes, it can happen here, meaning fascism, meaning something other than what is democracy. Now, I think we're already there. When the President of the United States is saying that the news is the enemy of the people, you know, I have a dictator checklist that I read on my show sometimes, things that no American president has ever done, but this president does. Appointing your family to key government positions. This is banana republic
stuff. So you think he wouldn't leave?
That is one of them. I absolutely think he will not leave.
There you go. And he didn't. He tried to stay in power unlawfully through a fake elector plot, through various BS lawsuits, and then, of course, through an insurrection that led to that entailed and included a riot, a physical riot in which hundreds, if not thousands, of his supporters raided the United States Capitol and tried to murder the Vice President of the United States and multiple members of Congress. So Bill Maher was right, years in advance. I should also say this wasn't so much a prediction as it was an assessment, which turned out to be true just by the very decision that President Biden made. But this was several months ago, Bill Maher saying that he thinks that President Biden would lose to Donald Trump in the 2024 election, and that his ability to win the election is much more questionable than his ability to do the job.
Okay, what do you think of prominent Democrats like David Axelrod calling for Biden to, quote, get out or get going? Did he say that? Get out or get going?
I believe in a tweet or two and some stuff. Look, people who think that Joe Biden is perhaps too old, they're right.
Perhaps.
Don't spill the water. Something might come out of it. It's not that, you know, everyone ages differently.
I agree.
So Betty White lived to be 99. No. Mick Jagger is still twisting his ass.
Mr. Right. I've been the one making that case year after year here against ageism. I always said it's a case-by-case basis. But for that argument to have teeth, you also have to be the person who can go, yeah, but this is the case. And I've said it before. Do I think Joe Biden can do the job? Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't think he can win the job. And that's what I care about. He's going to lose because the people think he's too old. And perception is reality. I'm sorry.
So as somebody who defended President Biden and thinks that President Biden has been a good president and also says that President Biden can do the job based on the evidence, listen to what Bill Maher said at the end. He thinks that Bill Maher thinks that Joe Biden could not have won the election because people think he's too old and perception dictates reality. Now, that was my position in the sense of that the age concerns about Biden were largely media-driven, self-created. Biden did have a disastrous performance in the debate, there's no doubt about it, but it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know if he would have won the election or not. He was certainly down in the polls consistently by the time he made the decision to drop out, but for the most part, it was within the margin of error. The bottom line is, Bill Maher was right in that Joe Biden was eventually convinced that the probability of him losing was much higher and he was a risk to electing Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans. So President Biden made the choice based on the perception of those around him and the American people to step aside and not risk it and make a less risky maneuver by endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris. And again, I say this. I didn't make that prediction. I didn't predict that Biden was definitely going to lose. I didn't even predict that it would be a good idea for him to step aside given the incumbency advantage, given the potential chaos surrounding it. But people who did make that prediction that it would be better for Biden to step aside, which is what Bill Maher made, they are vindicated. They made the prediction and they were vindicated. I was much more cautious and saying, well, it's a risk either way, and I don't know how to assess it. They made the affirmative case, and they turned out to be right again. Doesn't necessarily mean that Maher is going to be right about this. I just think it says something that someone that cynical, that pessimistic, thinks that this is the death now of Trump's political career and that he will lose in the election as a consequence of this. And as a reminder, it's not just Bill Maher, Frank Luntz, top Republican pollster, went on the record to Piers Morgan. We did this. We covered this in a video, but it bears repeating, because it adds credence to Bill Maher's prediction. This is what Frank Luntz had to say.
Do you think Kamala won, and does that mean she may now win the election?
I think more accurately it's that Donald Trump lost. And this is not the worst debate performance I've seen in my career, but it's very close to it. The conversations about people eating dogs and cats, calling the leader of Hungary one of the greatest world leaders, repeatedly missing the opportunity to focus on inflation and affordability, and the complete inability to present his point of view without completely tearing into Joe Biden, into whomever was in his sights. It was a pretty negative performance, pretty pessimistic, cynical, contemptuous, and I think that this will cost him. Yes, I'm trying to decide if I want to go on record, and the answer is yes. I think that he loses because of this debate performance.
Wow.
So again, not just Bill Maher, because people are going to be like, well, Bill Maher wants Trump to lose, so we can't take in his predictions with any degree of credibility. Yeah, but it is true. Bill Maher wants Trump to lose. Frank Luntz wants him to win. But Bill Maher has made all kinds of predictions, which again have been bad for the country in terms of what he has predicted, not the fact that he predicted it. So again, this optimism to me should encourage us. I'll also say the polls reflected Simon Rosenberg, Democratic operative who writes for the Hopium Chronicles. He talks about this as well, post-debate polls. Morning Consult has the vice president up by 5. Ipsos, Reuters, has her up by 5. RMG has her up by 4 data. For Progress, up by 4 YouGov. LA Times has her up by 4. Lear, New York Post, has her up by 3. Redfield has her up by 2. I mean, right now, the momentum is squarely on the vice president's side. Now listen, I'm still enough of a cynic. Enough of a realist, I should say, to tell you that the polls can change and the election is not today. If the election were today, she'd probably win, but the election is not today. The election is in 50 days, okay? Things can change. We've seen just how much things can change. So it is incumbent on all of us, you and I and everyone else, if we're eligible voters, make sure we're registered to vote. Make sure we get out there and vote. Either be mail-in if you're eligible, absentee ballot if you're eligible, or in person if you're eligible, and make this prediction a reality. Make the potential a reality. But there you go. Bill Maher. Cynical, election, prophet. Cynical, politics, prophet believes that debate ended Donald Trump's chances of winning this election, or the likelihood that Donald Trump will win this election, and that should fill all of us with a degree of optimism. And in the meantime, you let me know what you think in the comments.